Have you ever loved someone so much, given them absolutely everything, only to hear them wish you dead for what you have? It's a question that gnaws at my soul every single day. I poured my entire life into her, built an empire with my bare hands, all for her future. Then, on her 25th birthday, amidst a lavish celebration I'd thrown, I heard the words that shattered my world. Listen to my story until the end and tell me, what would you have done in my place? I was Evelyn Thorne, a woman who had clawed her way to the top of New York real estate, standing on a penthouse rooftop watching my daughter Cassandra celebrate her quarter-century milestone. The city lights twinkled like diamonds, reflecting the life of privilege I had painstakingly built for her. I stepped away to take a private call, needing a moment of quiet, but what I heard instead was a conversation that froze my blood. Cassie, my beautiful, entitled daughter, was talking to her friend Brooke. Her voice, usually so sweet when asking for something, was dismissive, laced with a casual cruelty I'd never imagined. She complained about my control, my overprotective nature. Then, with a wave of her hand and a chillingly casual tone, she uttered the words that pierced my heart. Honestly, the best gift she could give me would be if she just died. Then I'd finally be free, and I'd get my inheritance. The words hung in the air, a venomous declaration of contempt and pure greed. I stood hidden in the shadows, paralyzed, a cold dread replacing the warmth I'd always felt for her. The extravagant party, the expensive gifts, the decades of sacrifice, all became utterly meaningless in that instant. My immediate reaction wasn't tears, but a profound, icy resolve that settled deep within my bones. My life began in a rough working-class neighborhood in Queens, a world away from rooftop parties. Poverty was my first teacher, instilling in me a fierce ambition and a meticulous approach to every single dollar. I worked multiple jobs, put myself through night school, and eventually founded Thorne Properties, a real estate empire built brick by brick through sheer grit and strategic foresight. I knew what it meant to earn every penny. I married a charming artist, but he passed away when Cassie was just 5. As a single mother, I poured every ounce of my love, ambition, and hard-won financial success into my only child. Cassie became my singular focus, my legacy, the very justification for every sacrifice I had ever made. She was meant to have the life I never did, a life free from want and struggle. My vast achievements, the company, my reputation as a shrewd businesswoman, even my philanthropic endeavors, all were, in my eyes, ultimately for Cassie. The betrayal cut so deep, precisely because she was the culmination of my life's work, the embodiment of my hopes and dreams. Hearing her casually wish for my death wasn't just painful, it was an annihilation of everything I believed in. In the immediate aftermath of that devastating birthday, my life didn't outwardly crumble, but my inner world was utterly devastated. I maintained a facade of normalcy, but within days, I quietly initiated the first phase of my plan. Cassie's credit cards mysteriously began to decline, her generous allowance abruptly stopped, and the rent for her luxurious apartment went unpaid. Cassie, accustomed to a life of effortless wealth, initially dismissed it as a minor oversight, perhaps a technical glitch. She called me, annoyed, expecting a quick fix. But as the financial taps remained stubbornly dry, her designer lifestyle quickly began to unravel. The calls became more frequent, more desperate, as the full weight of her new reality started to sink in. Friends, who had been drawn to her wealth and lavish spending, began to distance themselves. Cassie faced increasingly humiliating situations, being denied entry to exclusive clubs, having her expensive car repossessed, and eventually receiving an eviction notice from her penthouse. The whispers among our social circle grew louder. "Did you hear about Cassie? Her mother cut her off." I, Evelyn, though pained by the thought of her suffering, steelily ignored Cassie's increasingly frantic calls and texts. I allowed the full weight of her actions, her cruel words, to sink into her privileged world. My secret weapon wasn't some hidden asset. It was my vast, liquid wealth, combined with my unparalleled business acumen and a meticulously cultivated network of influence. My motivation wasn't just revenge, but a desperate, albeit harsh, desire to force her to grow up, to understand the true value of hard work, respect, and the love she so carelessly dismissed. This was her final, brutal lesson. Today you will learn my revenge story, a tale of love turned to betrayal so profound it shattered my entire world, leaving me adrift in a sea of emotional devastation. Have you ever poured your entire being into someone, given them absolutely everything you possess? Your time, your dreams, your hard-won fortune, only to hear them casually wish you dead for the very wealth you created for their future? It's a question that gnaws at my soul every single day, a persistent echo of a moment that irrevocably altered the course of my life. I had dedicated decades, built an empire with my bare hands from nothing, all with the singular purpose of securing a magnificent future for her, only to discover the depth of her contempt. Then, on her 25th birthday, amidst a lavish celebration I'd meticulously orchestrated on a glittering penthouse rooftop, I overheard the words that didn't just shatter my world, but pulverized it into dust. I am Evelyn Thorne, a woman who clawed her way to the very pinnacle of New York real estate through sheer force of will and relentless determination, and my daughter, Cassandra, the recipient of all my boundless affection and ambition, became the person I never imagined possible. It was a moment of stark, brutal clarity that fundamentally redefined our relationship. Listen to my story until the very end. Absorb every detail of this painful journey, and then tell me honestly, what would you have done in my place? My own life began far from any penthouse, in a rough, working-class neighborhood in Queens, where scarcity was a constant companion and ambition was forged in the fires of necessity. Poverty became my first, most demanding teacher, relentlessly instilling in me an unyielding drive and a meticulous, almost obsessive approach to every single dollar I ever encountered. I learned the hard way what it truly meant to earn something, to fight for every morsel, every opportunity, building a foundation of resilience that would later define my entire existence. I worked multiple grueling jobs, often simultaneously, putting myself through night school, fueled by a burning desire to escape the limitations of my upbringing and create a better life. Eventually, through sheer grit and an almost uncanny strategic foresight, I founded Thorne Properties, a real estate empire that I personally built brick by painstaking brick. Every deal, every negotiation, every late night spent poring over blueprints and contracts reinforced my understanding that true success comes only from relentless effort and a deep respect for the value of hard-earned money. I met and married a charming artist, whose gentle spirit was a welcome contrast to my driven nature, but tragically he passed away when our daughter Cassie was just 5 years old. From that moment on, as a single mother, I poured every ounce of my love, every shred of my ambition, and every dollar of my hard-won financial success into my only child. Cassie became my singular focus, my living legacy, the very justification for every sacrifice I had ever made, every personal dream I had deferred. She was meant to have the life I never did, a life entirely free from the relentless anxieties of want and struggle, a path paved with every advantage I could possibly provide. My vast achievements, the sprawling company, my formidable reputation as a shrewd businesswoman, even my extensive philanthropic endeavors, all were, in my deepest thoughts and intentions, ultimately for Cassie. The betrayal cut so excruciatingly deep, precisely because she was the culmination of my life's work, the living embodiment of all my hopes and dreams for a better future. The scene of this devastating revelation was Cassandra's lavish 25th birthday celebration, a spectacle of opulence held on a glittering penthouse rooftop overlooking the sprawling, indifferent tapestry of Manhattan. The city lights twinkled below us like scattered diamonds, a dazzling reflection of the life of effortless privilege I had painstakingly, agonizingly built for her. I remember stepping away from the joyous cacophony for a brief moment, needing to take a private call, but what I overheard instead was a conversation that didn't just freeze my blood, it turned it to ice. Cassie, my beautiful, outwardly charming but undeniably entitled daughter, was talking to her friend Brooke, completely oblivious to my hidden proximity. Her voice, which usually adopted such a sweet, almost angelic tone when she was asking for something, was now dismissive, laced with a casual cruelty I had never, in my wildest nightmares, imagined her capable of. She complained bitterly about my control, my overprotective nature. And then, with a flippant wave of her hand and a chillingly casual tone, she uttered the words that pierced my heart like a poisoned dart. Honestly, the best gift she could give me would be if she just died. Then I'd finally be free, and I'd get my inheritance. These venomous words hung in the crisp night air, a stark, unvarnished declaration of contempt and pure, unadulterated avarice. I stood frozen, hidden in the shadows, paralyzed by a cold dread that had utterly replaced the maternal warmth I'd always felt for her. The extravagant party, the expensive gifts, the decades of sacrifice, the endless nights of worry and effort, all of it became utterly meaningless, evaporating into thin air in that single, horrifying instant. My immediate reaction wasn't a flood of tears, as one might expect from a heartbroken mother, but rather a profound, icy resolve that settled deep within my bones, chilling me to my core. My life, at least outwardly, didn't immediately crumble in the aftermath of that devastating birthday, but my inner world was utterly annihilated, reduced to a barren wasteland of betrayal. I maintained a meticulous facade of normalcy, attending meetings, overseeing projects, but within days, I quietly initiated the first, covert phase of my carefully orchestrated plan. Cassie's numerous credit cards mysteriously began to decline, one by one, without any warning or explanation. Her incredibly generous monthly allowance, which had always flowed freely, abruptly stopped, leaving her in an unexpected financial vacuum. And, perhaps most significantly, the substantial rent for her luxurious penthouse apartment, a symbol of her unearned privilege, went conspicuously unpaid. Cassie, so accustomed to a life of effortless wealth and instant gratification, initially dismissed these anomalies as minor oversights, perhaps just a series of irritating technical glitches that would quickly resolve themselves. She called me, annoyed and demanding, expecting a quick fix, a simple wave of my hand to restore her accustomed lifestyle. But as the financial taps remained stubbornly and inexplicably dry, her carefully constructed designer lifestyle quickly, inevitably, began to unravel around her. The calls to me became more frequent, each one laced with increasing desperation, as the full, harsh weight of her new, impoverished reality slowly but surely started to sink into her privileged consciousness, stripping away her illusions of invincibility. Her fair-weather friends, those who had been drawn solely to her wealth and lavish spending habits, began to distance themselves with alarming speed, their loyalty proving as shallow as her understanding of money. Cassie faced an escalating series of increasingly humiliating situations, being denied entry to the exclusive clubs she once frequented, having her expensive luxury car repossessed from her private parking spot, and eventually, receiving a cold, impersonal eviction notice from her beloved penthouse. The whispers among our once shared social circle grew louder, more malicious. "Did you hear about Cassie? Her mother completely cut her off." I, Evelyn, though not immune to the painful thought of my daughter's suffering, steelily ignored Cassie's increasingly frantic calls and desperate texts. I allowed the full, crushing weight of her thoughtless actions and her cruel, dismissive words to sink deeply into her formerly privileged world, hoping the harshness would finally penetrate her self-centered bubble. My secret weapon wasn't some hidden asset or obscure legal loophole. It was my vast, liquid wealth, combined with my unparalleled business acumen, honed over decades in the cutthroat world of real estate, and a meticulously cultivated network of fiercely loyal influence. My motivation wasn't merely revenge, but a desperate, albeit undeniably harsh, desire to force her to grow up, to truly understand the immense value of hard work, respect, and the profound love she had so carelessly. Listen to this story until the end and tell me, what would you have done in my place? I'm Evelyn Thorne, a woman who built everything from nothing, only to have my world shattered by the one person I thought I was building it for. It was Cassie's 25th birthday, a lavish rooftop party I'd thrown for her, overlooking the glittering lights of Manhattan. I stepped away for a moment, just needing a quick, private call, but what I heard instead was a conversation that would forever change the course of my life, twisting everything I believed in into a bitter, unrecognizable knot. Hidden in the shadows, near a less frequented alcove, I heard my daughter, my beautiful Cassie, talking to her friend Brooke. Her voice, usually so sweet when she wanted something from me, was dismissive, laced with a casual cruelty I'd never imagined. She complained about my control, my overprotective nature, as if my love was a burden. Then, with a flippant wave of her hand, she uttered the words that pierced my very soul. Honestly, the best gift she could give me would be if she just died. Then, I'd finally be free, and I'd get my inheritance. The venomous words hung in the crisp night air, a declaration of pure contempt and avarice. My heart didn't break, it froze. I didn't cry. A cold dread replaced the warmth I'd always felt for her, settling deep within my bones. The extravagant party, the expensive gifts, the decades of sacrifice, all became utterly meaningless in that instant. My immediate reaction wasn't tears, but a profound, icy resolve. That moment changed everything, marking the irreversible beginning of a path from which there would be no turning back. My story started far from these glittering penthouses, in a cramped, noisy apartment nestled deep within Queens. Poverty wasn't just an abstract concept there. It was the very air we breathed, the constant gnawing hum of worry that permeated every conversation, every decision. It taught me, with a brutal clarity, that nothing in life was simply given. Everything had to be fought for, earned with raw sweat and an unyielding force of will. That fundamental lesson etched itself deep into my soul, shaping my perspective and fueling an internal fire that would define my entire existence. It became the bedrock of my character, a silent promise to myself that I would rise above those circumstances, no matter the cost, no matter the effort required. That pervasive scarcity, that relentless struggle for basic needs, didn't break me. Instead, it forged me into something resilient and unyielding. It instilled in me a fierce, almost desperate ambition, a constant hunger for something more than mere survival. Every dollar I managed to lay my hands on, every penny I painstakingly earned from a myriad of odd jobs, was meticulously counted, saved, and strategically planned for its future use. I learned to respect money not for its superficial ability to buy luxury, but for the profound freedom and security it represented, a powerful shield against the harsh, unforgiving world I knew so intimately. My escape route from that life of perpetual want was education, pursued relentlessly through night school. While many others my age were out enjoying the fleeting pleasures of youth, I was buried deep in textbooks, my nights illuminated by the dim glow of a cheap lamp, fueled by endless cups of lukewarm coffee, and an unshakable belief that knowledge was my only viable path out. I worked multiple grueling jobs, often back-to-back, barely allowing myself the luxury of sleep, saving every spare cent. I didn't just earn a degree, I earned my education, a testament to my unwavering dedication and iron will, a qualification forged in the crucible of sheer necessity. Thorne Properties didn't just miraculously appear overnight. It was a testament to years of relentless effort, built brick by painstaking brick, through countless sleepless nights and a series of carefully calculated risks. I started incredibly small, buying rundown properties in neglected neighborhoods, personally fixing them up with my own two hands, learning every intricate aspect of the business from the ground up. People often called me shrewd, even relentless, but I simply called it survival and foresight. I possessed an uncanny ability to see immense opportunities where others saw only urban blight and despair, and I seized those chances with an unwavering, almost predatory determination. Amidst all that relentless grind and the constant fight to establish my empire, I met David, an artist with a remarkably gentle soul and a kind heart. He was a stark, welcome contrast to my intensely driven nature, bringing a much-needed lightness and a sense of calm into my otherwise turbulent existence. For a precious while, life felt softer, less like a continuous uphill battle. He understood my towering ambition, but also lovingly helped me discover and cherish moments of profound peace and quiet joy. Our love was a quiet, unwavering anchor in my storm-tossed life, a rare and beautiful calm in the midst of my self-made tempest. Then came Cassie, my beautiful, vibrant daughter, a tiny bundle of pure joy who instantly became my entire world. She was everything I had ever dreamed of, a living embodiment of hope. Tragically, just 5 short years later, David was gone, leaving me a single mother, facing the world alone once more, but with an even greater purpose. That profound loss, rather than breaking me, amplified my already fierce resolve. Cassie immediately became my singular focus, the very reason for every breath I took, every sacrifice I made. I vowed with every fiber of my being that she would never, ever know the struggles, the anxieties, the constant want that I had endured. She would have a life entirely free from hardship, a future paved with opportunities I could only have dreamed of. Every ounce of my fierce maternal love, every single dollar of my hard-won financial success was meticulously poured into her future, into her happiness. I didn't just want her to be merely comfortable. I wanted her to absolutely thrive, to possess every conceivable advantage that I had been so cruelly denied. Her education, her cultural experiences, her every fleeting whim, I saw them all as critical investments in her blossoming future, in our shared future. She was, in my mind and heart, my living legacy, the vibrant, breathing proof of everything I had painstakingly overcome, the ultimate justification for every single hardship I had faced. My burgeoning company, Thorn Properties, transcended its identity as a mere business. It evolved into the unshakable foundation for Cassie's entire future, a fortress of financial security built expressly for her. My formidable reputation as a shrewd, unwavering businesswoman in the cutthroat world of real estate, even my extensive philanthropic endeavors, all of it, in my deepest thoughts and purest intentions, was ultimately for her benefit. It was never truly about personal glory or accumulating vast wealth for myself. It was fundamentally about constructing an impenetrable shield of prosperity around my beloved child, ensuring that her path through life would be smooth, privileged, and undeniably prosperous. I loved her with an intensity that only a mother who had clawed her way up from nothing, who had fought for every single scrap of her existence, could truly comprehend. She was my unwavering hope, my greatest joy, the living culmination of my life's most arduous work and deepest affections. This boundless, almost suffocating love, this unwavering devotion, was simultaneously my most profound and dangerous vulnerability. It meant that her casual, thoughtless betrayal, when it finally struck, didn't merely inflict pain. It utterly annihilated me, pulverizing the very core of my being, leaving behind a desolate emotional wasteland where my heart once resided. To hear her so casually wish for my death, to dismiss my entire life's relentless effort, my decades of sacrifice, and my boundless love as nothing more than a mere obstacle to her premature inheritance, was not just painful. It was an act of profound, soul-crushing destruction. It made every struggle, every tear, every single sacrifice, every cherished moment of maternal love feel utterly meaningless, evaporating into thin air. That's precisely why you need to understand where I truly came from, to fully grasp the immeasurable depth of what was lost, what was so cruelly desecrated. Now, honestly, tell me, what would you have done in my place after hearing such a thing? My inner world, however, was utterly devastated, reduced to a barren wasteland of betrayal and incomprehensible grief, even as my outer life continued its relentless, successful pace. I maintained a meticulous facade of normalcy, attending high-stakes meetings, overseeing complex projects, and charming investors. But beneath it all, a cold, calculating resolve had taken root. Within days of Cassie's birthday, with a surgeon's precision, I quietly initiated the first, covert phase of my carefully orchestrated plan, a plan born not just of anger, but of a desperate, twisted love. Cassie's numerous credit cards, once her unquestioned gateway to every luxury and whim, mysteriously began to decline, one by one, without any warning or explanation. Her incredibly generous monthly allowance, which had always flowed freely from my accounts, abruptly stopped, leaving her in an unexpected, stark financial vacuum. Then, perhaps most significantly, the substantial rent for her luxurious penthouse apartment, a towering symbol of her unearned privilege and my boundless generosity, went conspicuously unpaid. Cassie, so thoroughly accustomed to a life of effortless wealth and instant gratification, initially dismissed these unsettling anomalies as mere minor oversights, perhaps just a series of irritating technical glitches that would quickly resolve themselves with a phone call. Her initial calls to me were laced with annoyance and a demanding expectation, as if I were her personal IT department, responsible for fixing her minor inconveniences. She expected a swift, simple wave of my hand to restore her accustomed lifestyle, completely oblivious to the deliberate nature of her predicament. But as the financial taps remained stubbornly and inexplicably dry, as days stretched into weeks, her carefully constructed designer lifestyle quickly, inevitably, began to unravel around her, like a cheap, ill-fitting garment. The calls to me became more frequent, each one progressively laced with increasing desperation and a growing, unsettling panic, as the full, harsh weight of her new, impoverished reality slowly but surely started to sink into her privileged consciousness, stripping away her illusions of invincibility. Her fair-weather friends, those glittering hangers-on who had been drawn solely to her wealth and lavish spending habits, began to distance themselves with alarming speed and thinly veiled excuses. Their loyalty, it turned out, was as shallow and ephemeral as her understanding of true friendship and the value of $1. She found herself increasingly alone, watching as her once vibrant social calendar emptied, leaving her with only the uncomfortable silence of her own making. Then came the public humiliations, small at first, but each one a stinging reminder of her plummeting status. I heard through my network how she was denied entry to a notoriously exclusive club she once frequented, her name conspicuously absent from the guest list, her protests met with indifferent stares from bouncers who once greeted her with fawning deference. It was a stark, public rejection, a visible crack in her carefully cultivated facade. The whispers grew louder, more malicious, spreading like wildfire through our once shared social circle. "Did you hear about Cassie? Her mother completely cut her off." These whispers were not just gossip. They were a death knell to her social standing, a public declaration of her fall from grace. Her image, once one of effortless glamour, was now marred by the stain of financial ruin, making her an object of pity and cruel amusement. Then came the ultimate blow to her sense of freedom and independence. Her expensive luxury car, a gift from me, was unceremoniously repossessed from her private parking spot. The image of the tow truck hauling away her gleaming status symbol, a very public display of her financial insolvency, was a bitter pill for her to swallow, a crushing blow to her pride, and a stark reminder of her sudden vulnerability. The eviction notice from her beloved penthouse arrived next, a cold, impersonal piece of paper that sealed her fate. Losing her home, this sanctuary of her unearned privilege, was not just a practical setback, it was a profound, symbolic dismantling of her entire identity, forcing her to confront the harsh reality that the gilded cage she lived in was entirely built and maintained by someone else. I, Evelyn, though not entirely immune to the painful thought of my daughter's suffering, steelily ignored Cassie's increasingly frantic calls and desperate texts. Each unanswered ring, each unread message, was a deliberate act, a silent reinforcement of the lesson I was determined to impart. I allowed the full, crushing weight of her thoughtless actions and her cruel, dismissive words to sink deeply into her formerly privileged world. This was a brutal education, yes, but one I believed was absolutely necessary. My secret weapon wasn't some hidden asset or obscure legal loophole. It was my vast, liquid wealth, combined with my unparalleled business acumen, honed over decades in the cutthroat world of real estate, and a meticulously cultivated network of fiercely loyal influence that stretched far and wide, making her avenues for escape increasingly narrow. My motivation wasn't merely simple revenge, a petty desire to see her suffer for suffering's sake. No, it was a desperate, albeit undeniably harsh, desire to force her to grow up, to truly understand the immense value of hard work, respect, and the profound, unconditional love she had so carelessly dismissed. I wanted her to grasp the true cost of her entitlement, to feel the weight of self-reliance. As Cassie's world continued to crumble, I quietly ensured that every potential avenue for her to secure easy money or a quick bailout was systematically closed. Her attempts to reach out to old family friends or business associates were met with polite but firm rejections, their hands tied by a silent understanding, a subtle influence I exerted through my network. No one would offer her a lifeline I hadn't approved. I heard reports of her trying to sell some of her designer clothes and accessories, only to be offered pitiful sums by consignment shops. These were items she once flaunted, symbols of her status, now reduced to mere second-hand goods, their perceived value plummeting alongside her own. Each small defeat compounded her despair, chipping away at her remaining pride. The contrast between our lives became stark, almost unbearable. While she spiraled downwards, I continued to thrive outwardly, my empire growing stronger, my reputation as formidable as ever. But within me, there was no triumph, only a quiet, simmering pain, a constant ache for the daughter I had lost. Even as I meticulously engineered her fall, this was not joy, but a grim duty. Cassie, once so vibrant and carefree, was now a shadow of her former self, haggard and bewildered, grappling with a reality she never imagined. She was forced to move out of her luxurious apartment, eventually finding a cramped, shared space in a far less desirable part of the city, a harsh, undeniable symbol of her absolute rock bottom, a world away from the penthouses. I observed her from a distance, through carefully placed contacts, watching her struggle, witnessing her humiliation firsthand. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. Painful, yet necessary. I saw the anger, the confusion, but also, slowly, a flicker of something else. A raw, unfamiliar fear, perhaps even a nascent understanding of her predicament, dawning in her eyes. This wasn't just about financial loss for her. It was about the destruction of her entire identity, the stripping away of every comfort and privilege she had taken for granted her entire life. She was utterly isolated, abandoned by those who once flocked to her, left to face the consequences of her callous words entirely alone, without the safety net she had always assumed would be there. Despite the profound ache in my own heart, the deep, personal cost of this painful undertaking, my resolve remained as solid as the foundations of my tallest buildings. There was no turning back now. I had set this course, and I would see it through. This was her final, brutal lesson, and I was determined to make sure she learned it, no matter how much it cost both of us. She was at rock bottom, truly, unequivocally, but even in that desolate place, I knew, or at least desperately hoped, that a seed of something new would begin to sprout within her. For me, Evelyn Thorne, the architect of this painful downfall, my determination to fight back against the injustice she had inflicted, was now cemented, unwavering, and ready for the next phase. Cassie thought she knew me. She saw Mom, the overprotective figure, the endless ATM. She saw the penthouse, the parties, the designer clothes, all the outward signs of wealth. What she never saw, never bothered to understand, was the engine behind it all, the sheer, unrelenting force it took to build that life from absolutely nothing. She couldn't fathom the kind of woman who had to claw her way up from the bottom, a woman who learned to see every dollar not just as money, but as power, as a tool for survival. My real secret wasn't a hidden treasure chest in the attic. It was far more pervasive, far more intricate. My vast liquid wealth wasn't just numbers in a bank account. It was a finely tuned machine, decades in the making, diversified across countless investments, some visible, many completely opaque to the casual observer. I had built a financial fortress, with assets flowing through different channels, always accessible, always ready to be deployed with surgical precision. This wasn't just inherited luck. This was meticulously earned and strategically managed. Then there was my business acumen, a fancy way of saying I knew how to play the game, and I played to win. The real estate world in New York isn't for the faint of heart. It's a brutal, cutthroat arena where mistakes are costly and weakness is exploited. I didn't just survive. I dominated. I understood market fluctuations before they happened, spotted legal loopholes others missed, and, most crucially, I understood people. I could read intentions, predict moves, and always stay 3 steps ahead. And my network. Cassie saw me at charity galas, shaking hands with important people, but she never grasped the depth of those connections. These weren't just acquaintances. They were fiercely loyal individuals, lawyers, financial advisors, politicians, industry leaders, people I had helped, people I had earned respect from, people who owed me favors, or simply believed in my vision. They were my eyes and ears, my silent army, ready to act on a subtle nod, a quiet request, without ever needing an explanation. Cassie, in her privileged bubble, never truly saw me as Evelyn Thorne, the titan of industry. She saw Mom. To her, I was a source of endless funds, an obstacle to her freedom, a relic of a bygone era, perhaps even a bit naive. She completely underestimated the sheer force of will, the strategic mind, and the unwavering determination that had built everything she so casually took for granted. She believed my love made me weak, blind. She was wrong. My strategic intelligence wasn't just about property deals. It extended to understanding human psychology, especially hers. I knew her patterns, her vulnerabilities, her absolute dependence on a lifestyle she hadn't earned. I knew exactly which levers to pull, which threads to cut, to unravel her world piece by piece. It wasn't about sudden, dramatic moves, but a carefully orchestrated, slow tightening of the noose, making her feel every single consequence. This wasn't just about getting even for her cruel words. That desire was certainly there, a cold ember burning in my chest, but it was overshadowed by something else, something far more profound. It was a desperate, undeniably harsh, desire to force her to grow up, to truly understand the immense, often brutal value of hard work, respect, and the profound, unconditional love she had so carelessly dismissed. This was her final, brutal lesson, and I was determined it would stick. Every penny I earned from those grueling jobs in Queens, every sleepless night studying, every calculated risk I took in the early days of Thorn Properties, all of it contributed to this formidable resource. It wasn't just money. It was the embodiment of resilience, resourcefulness, and an unshakable belief in my own abilities. My past wasn't a burden. It was the crucible that forged my greatest strengths Cassie never even knew existed. So while Cassie spiraled, believing her world was collapsing due to some inexplicable cosmic misfortune, I was merely pulling the strings. I had the means, the knowledge, and the unwavering resolve to not just retaliate, but to completely redefine her reality. The game was rigged from the start, not by fate, but by a mother who had loved too much, and now was determined to teach a lesson too painful to ignore. This wasn't a random act of misfortune befalling her. It was a deliberate, calculated strategy. Every door that closed, every friend who vanished, every comfort that evaporated from Cassie's life was a direct result of my silent command. The audience should realize now, if they hadn't before, that this wasn't just a story of loss, but a meticulously planned act of justice, orchestrated by a woman who knew exactly how to wield her power. Cassie, stripped of everything, found herself at the absolute bottom, a harsh reality I had meticulously orchestrated. My network, a silent, pervasive force, ensured that any attempt she made to leverage old connections for quick cash or an easy job were politely, but firmly rebuffed. It was then, as desperation truly set in, that the opportunity arose, a carefully laid trap disguised as a lifeline. Through a shell company I controlled, she was offered a menial cleaning job at one of Thorn Properties' less glamorous commercial buildings, far from the gleaming towers she once frequented. She signed the contract under an assumed name, oblivious, forced to scrub toilets and mop floors for minimum wage, experiencing the true, grueling physical labor and crushing humility of a life she had always scorned. I made sure no one on site knew her true identity, letting her believe she was just another anonymous struggling worker. Months crawled by, each one stripping away more of Cassie's entitlement, replacing it with exhaustion and a nascent, painful understanding of what real work entailed. I watched her from a distance, through reports and discreet observations, noting the subtle changes in her demeanor, the lines of fatigue etched on her face. Then, the moment arrived for the strategic revelation. I scheduled a routine inspection of that very commercial building, ensuring my path would cross hers. I dressed down, blending in, observing her as she struggled with a heavy bucket, her once manicured hands raw and calloused. She didn't recognize me at first, just an unfamiliar, stern woman in sensible shoes. It was in that stark, unvarnished setting, amidst the scent of industrial cleaner, that I finally spoke, calmly outlining how her own cruel words had led her to this very place, detailing every step of my calculated plan to teach her the value of self-reliance. Her face, a canvas of shock and dawning horror, was exactly what I had anticipated. There were no tears, no dramatic confrontations, just a quiet, devastating conversation where the full weight of my manipulation settled upon her. She finally understood. I didn't gloat, nor did I offer a sudden restoration of her wealth. That would have undermined the entire painful lesson. Instead, I presented her with a choice, a real opportunity earned through her own struggle. You can continue this path, I told her, my voice devoid of emotion. Or you can accept a scholarship to a community college for business. No direct financial aid from me, no handouts. Earn your degree, prove your commitment, and then son, there might be a job interview at Thorn Properties. The choice, Cassandra, is entirely yours. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with the weight of her entire future. To my surprise, and a faint hidden glimmer of hope in my own heart, she chose the path of arduous self-improvement. Years passed, marked by relentless effort. I kept my distance, only receiving updates through my network. She excelled in her studies, worked part-time jobs, and slowly, painstakingly, rebuilt her life, brick by emotional brick. The entitlement was gone, replaced by a quiet resilience, a newfound respect for the effort required to achieve anything worthwhile. Eventually, a new Cassandra emerged, tempered by hardship, educated by experience, and ready to stand on her own 2 feet, not as my privileged daughter, but as a capable, self-made woman. The memorable scene of Final Justice wasn't a grand, public spectacle, but a quiet, profound moment in my office. Cassandra, now a junior manager at Thorn Properties, a position she had earned entirely on her own merit, stood before me. She presented a meticulously prepared quarterly report, detailing her team's successes with a professional confidence I had never seen in her. As she finished, I looked at her, not with the coldness of revenge, but with a complex, knowing pride. "You earned this, Cassandra," I said, the words heavy with years of unspoken pain and the profound satisfaction of a lesson learned. My legacy was no longer just my wealth. It was the unlikely, hard-won transformation of my daughter, a testament to a brutal love that had ultimately saved her. My spirit, finally, was at peace.